Everybody, Harned Ryan Hoke here. Hopefully you're settled in on a nice Thursday evening. What a nice day, huh?
It feels like summer, and it's felt like summer for days now.
We went from record highs early this week to near record highs yesterday and today, and here we are looking at temperatures in the 80s, but all of that's coming to an end because we've got a cold front moving our way, and that's going to spark some showers and thunderstorms. We'll let folks get settled in. We've got a few folks in here now, but we've just sent out the push alerts on our news app and weather app. So as you make your way into the room, if you have comments or questions, we'll get to as many of those as we can before the next 30 minutes is up. We are tracking storms. We're going to be showing you where those are and what to expect as we look forward to the next several hours, because for us, our storm chance really does not increase until late tonight. So you can see from our SkyTrack view, our clouds have started to increase, but our storm chance not just yet.
Yeah, and you'll notice the severe thunderstorm watch, if you were watching Wave News at 7, popped on the screen at the bottom there. This is for our westernmost 8 counties until 3 o'clock this evening. Whenever a watch is issued like this that's partially covering our counties, the question always comes up, will we see the watch expanded to include more of these counties, including Louisville? It is possible, but one thing working against that is that these storms will be weakening as they move in tonight. So it's kind of a wait and see situation on if that watch may make it into the city or not.
You know, we always talk about how these storms can weaken as they move a little closer to us, especially during the overnight hours. So what we're going to notice is that with the loss of the sunshine and the daytime heating that provides the instability, the energy that we need, once we start to lose that, still holds on for a couple of hours after sunset. But once you start getting toward midnight or beyond, you're starting to then lose, in most instances, a lot of that energy needed for this type of a setup. And that's why the watch does not include us. Again, we'll determine if a watch down the line is needed as we see these thunderstorms, if they are able to weaken, which we suspect they will be able to do. So you'll notice that watch is in place until, 3 a.m.?
3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, so this is going to be a late night for folks out to our west even. There's where the storms are now, and you'll notice several severe thunderstorm warnings, a couple tornado warnings. Kevin, this is down from the number of tornado warnings they had earlier. I mean, they had like 5 or 6 at one point in sync at the same time.
Pretty much right over the St. Louis metropolitan area.
They've had a spring already, haven't they?
Oh, wow. That's been rough to see. In fact, not just this time around, but you're right, several other times. Anytime we've had some threats of severe weather, they've actually had it too. So you're looking at the current warnings stretching from Effingham down to Carbondale, a tornado warning in between. That's moving on off to the east. There comes the chat there for the push. You'll notice those thunderstorms also contain a lot of lightning, and that's going to be expected. Really 2 groups of storms, one in West Kentucky that you can see, and then the other one along the main line. That itself is with the actual front that's going to be pushing ahead of us and toward us later on tonight. So we'll actually see 2 chances, and they'll probably wind up merging over top of us by that 11 o'clock time frame, it looks like.
Yeah, so Wave News at 11, going to be a busy time. Make sure you're watching either on TV or on our live stream as these storms push across the region here. And you'll see, of course, that severe thunderstorm watch box doesn't just cover our westernmost 8 counties, but also goes back to central Illinois. The Storm Prediction Center issuing that, of course, during that 7 o'clock hour here. Let's take a wide view here, because you'll see that this cold front goes all the way down to Texas. They did have a tornado warning down in central Texas earlier, saw one in Mississippi earlier. This is kind of a big time front moving through that's going to take us back down to seasonable levels for temperatures here. Kevin, when we get into the 80s and early to mid-April here, that's not normal. Something's got to give, right?
Well, it was record highs, in fact. So anytime you're dealing with records and you come crashing back below normal, nature likes to be in balance, and at some point will always be and find that equilibrium. And it just so happens to be with a cold front tonight that this moves through. And that's going to take us back into the 60s, and you're really going to feel it for the weekend. Sunday's the coolest of the entire 10-day forecast, highs in the low 60s by then. We'll show you that in a second. This front is moving our way. There's no stopping that tonight. We'll wind up seeing the chance for these downpours to push in ahead of that front itself. And there you see sort of the collision or coalescence of those 2 groups of storms, one to the south, the one moving in from the west. That still has the potential to produce some strong wind, especially when they merge together. So we'll be watching that in indeed they do merge, that's going to be critical because that can spin the atmosphere a little bit. That would happen around 10 to midnight, areas just to our west and then pushing our way. And then, of course, by the time we hit that 3-4 o'clock time frame in the morning, it's already past us here in Louisville, and things are already weakening by that point in a big way. So I don't think we have much of a threat past that 2 a.m. time frame for us here in Louisville. If it happens, it's going to happen before then. If we wind up seeing strong storms, they would happen before then. And again, the whole question mark this evening is, when will the weakening trend start? And at this point, we'll keep an eye on it. Hasn't happened just yet, though we have noted fewer tornado warnings. So between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. will be our sort of target time that we're watching the storms to our west.
And that's why we've declared the alert day for the overnight hours between those two times there. Damaging winds in excess of 65 miles per hour are the main concern with these. I know a lot of folks get a little itchy and scratchy about a tornado threat during an overnight period here. Just know that this one is lower than other severe weather threats that we faced here. This is mainly a wind threat. However, with any sort of tornado threat here, it would be just a very short-lived spin-up tornado threat within the line of storms moving through here, if they should survive and be strong enough to do that. And it would be mainly west of I-65 where that would be the case. I want to show you the Storm Prediction Center's outlook here, because I think this demonstrates pretty well what we're talking about. Where you see the yellow, that's the 2 out of 5 slight risk of severe storms. That's along and west of I-65. This is what I called a flex zone here. This is kind of the iffy part of the forecast. How far into this yellow slight risk will these storms survive as severe storms before they start to downgrade below that point? That remains to be seen. Where you see the brown there near Jasper, Indiana, Du Bois County, that's an enhanced risk, a 3 out of 5. And the issue there is that areas a little closer to Jasper and Huntingburg will be more exposed to those western storms before they start to weaken here. So you folks out there would have the greatest risk. Now I want to talk to you folks from Frankfort down to Columbia, Campbellsville, Lebanon, up toward even just east of LaGrange here. Your threat's a lot lower. It's that 1 out of 5, just because those storms would have weakened even more so than they would have in Louisville by the time they get to you. The message is still the same between 9 p.m., 2 a.m., main timing on that, west of I-65, the main threat.
Yeah, we're sort of, in a way, regardless of how we look at it, even if we wind up with a warning or two, we're going to luck out on this event in the sense that it's not happening during the prime heating hours when we would have all that energy. So it will be weakening as it moves closer to us at some point, and likely before it reaches our viewing area. That's the good news about this tonight. I know a lot of people in the chats are asking about specific locations. I think Ryan did a nice job of going through sort of the boundaries of where it would be the strongest. West of 65, we're going to have to watch. If you're east of 65, keep an eye on it, but it doesn't look like it's going to be too big of a deal. The timing is still going to be our western counties, 9, 10 o'clock, along I-65 between, say, 10 and midnight, past Louisville between midnight and 2. So that's what we'd be looking at in terms of the timing of this. Our main threat, obviously, is wind. We've got a lot of wind energy with this system. The tornado threat is not zero because we still have enough shear in the atmosphere. And with any of these mergers that happen, we can get a quick spin up. But this isn't a massive severe weather outbreak, certainly not a massive tornado outbreak.
And I think something that should be impressed upon all of us is the watch that is out is a severe thunderstorm watch, not a tornado watch. We've had more tornado watches than not this season. So this is not the same situation that we faced with the last couple of severe weather threats like April 2nd and March 14th. This isn't even in that stratosphere, that hemisphere, if you will, just because the setup is different here. The severe weather ingredients are different, and that's what's playing into this. We're going into an overnight period. Kevin just mentioned how we're going to be losing the heating of the day heading into the overnight. The sun has already set. So that instability is going to be coming down as these storms move eastbound. That's why we've categorized that as just moderate. It may even go low. And then the moisture, wind shear, and lift, they're all there, but they're just, they're high, but they're going to be counteracted by that lower instability.
Yeah, and as always, if you're in a slight risk, if you're in an enhanced risk, if you're in a watch, near a watch, have a warning, you got to have ways to get this information. So keeping ahead of the storm is the first. You'll notice that today we have an alert day in place. That was the first step. We mentioned yesterday and the day before, as we were looking at the Wednesday, Thursday timeframe, that we'd be making some changes. We took the alert day off of Wednesday. We added it to Thursday, saying, well, now it looks like when the actual front moves through is going to be the most sort of time to pay attention to. So the first step is paying attention to the newscast and seeing when we have alert days. Oftentimes they're well in advance of the active weather. If you have the Wave Weather app, you can see that. You turn on the alerts in your settings. If you don't want to get all the lightning alerts or the floods or the heavy rain, you can toggle that off. The best part about our app is it's customizable. We say that all the time, but some people are like, it just drives me nuts. Boop, and then they delete it. No, you can customize it. That's the best part. The NOAA weather radio, I've always said every home should have one. It's like a smoke detector for storms. It gives you the first line of defense whenever there's anything issued by the National Weather Service. They're the only ones that can issue the warnings. We can sort of tell you when we think a warning is going to be issued. And if you were watching us in that last severe weather episode when we had storms moving into the metro, we pinpointed that about 5 minutes before the warning came out saying, wow, look at this right over southern Clark County. We're going to have to watch this. Wouldn't be surprised if a tornado warning was issued, and then bing, eventually it came out. So the weather radio, good place to, or a good thing to have in any place that you are. And then, of course, the power sometimes goes out. We've got to make sure our devices are charged.
Yeah. And one note on the Wave Weather app, I've been helping a few folks in my family recently with the radar part of it. Just know those three little dots, that button on the bottom right with the three little dots, it brings up a menu with a ton of options for your radar overlays, like warnings, different things you can plot, like temperature. There's a lot of different things. You may not like the default on that. So hit that button with the three little dots, bottom right-hand corner. You'll see a bunch of things you can change to make it easier for you to read, change the map background, etc. Public service announcement for all of those using the Wave Weather app.
You know, we've been keeping an eye on the radar all night tonight. You can see a couple more tornado warnings from Champaign down toward the Carbondale area. We have had a chance to keep an eye on many of our sister stations. The great part about being in a large television group, because we have 113 TV stations, is the fact that we can watch and participate in severe weather coverage with many of our colleagues. So I want to take you to Grant Dade, who's keeping an eye on these storms just out to the west of us. And we'll just listen in to Grant as he tracks those storms from the Carbondale area. And he's looking at a storm near Fredericktown. I'm going to turn his audio up here.
Very short. So let's pan on out, take a look at everything before I throw it back to regular scheduled programming. The big storms out ahead of this line, Murray, Kentucky is about to move out of the area. We've got strong gusty winds. It looks like straight line winds right now from Mount Vernon down towards close to Carbondale. And then we follow this with a broken line, watching this storm very closely and more storms developing rapidly. So again, Cassie Campbell's here, Madeline Parker, and myself. We are keeping you up to date. We're going to keep our eyes on the radar throughout the night, and we will be breaking in as needed to keep you informed.
Off the air too.
All right, and there's Grant Dade out of our sister station over in
a little bit more about
Carbondale. And they've gone back to regularly scheduled programming, but that just gives you an idea. We're able to, help those guys, work with them. Hurricanes are really when the help comes in. Tornadoes are so short-lived; they have their own teams, much like we do. But if we needed to, we could help them out as well. So for folks that are jumping in, asking some questions, we're going to leave the radar up. We'll watch that. Notice the lightning count. Couple of rounds of storms going on just off to the south of Paducah, in between Paducah and Nashville, and then, of course, the main line with the actual warnings that are going pretty much now almost exclusively. We've got a couple down in Missouri, but the bulk of them across southern parts of Illinois. All right, a lot of folks just saying hi. There's Derek. Hello back at you. Appreciate you saying hey. We've got Chris or Dennis saying hello, and he's saying hey to Chris. So a lot of people just saying hey to everybody in here.
It's a family reunion in the comments section, right?
These comments, once you click on one, it's like the third one down is the one that comes up on the screen.
Yes.
Let's just take a look. Here's one from Brooke, I believe. And Brooke's saying, those severe thunderstorms are super nasty west of us, winds up to 80 miles an hour with some of them. Yeah, we've been keeping an eye on some of those warnings, and many of them have had the observed tag, which means that not only is it radar indicated, but they actually have the damage, which we've seen out of the St. Louis area. whether it was tornado or straight line winds, we don't know yet, but there's certainly been some damage because of strong winds.
Yeah, so if you see on our radar the kind of the black outline on the severe thunderstorm warnings or the white outline on the tornado warnings, that's when they have those extra tags, meaning either observed, considerable, something that's just different from a baseline warning. Something real bad has usually happened when those are on the screen there.
And that one is radar indicated. All of the tornado warnings that you see on this map, radar indicated. And I'm looking to see that there's the severe thunderstorm warning just above that tornado warning has the black outline on it. And you can see that would mean that it's observed.
Bingo, right there. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, let's see. What else? Here's one talking about, I prefer hurricanes. Grew up in southern Alabama. Yeah, you can at least see those coming days in advance, right, James?
Yeah, the bad part about hurricanes is like all the damage in the aftermath, going without power and utilities for a while. Like, yikes, that's no fun.
No, not at all. And the flooding, they wind up with a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Jeff Lyons, who is from WFIE, our sister station over in Evansville, is also tracking these storms. Let's just listen to him for a second here. And we'll
going on too.
The Postal Service says there's a new initiative called Project Safe.
Hang on one second. We'll take the other audio off here.
Large hill here just out to the west of Mount Vernon, between Mount
I'll
Vernon
pop it on here once we get Jeff on.
And these are out of the 14 News viewing area. Maybe you've happened onto this coverage here on Facebook and you live somewhere in southern Illinois. I'll look at the comments here in a minute while Byron is going to fill you in on some new information that he has over in the Weather Center. What do you have, Byron?
All right, Jeff, we're going to illustrate where the strongest storm is right now. It's up over Clay County, Illinois. So if you're in Clay County, Fairfield,
And again, they're on their digital stream, just alerting viewers of what's happening. They're not breaking into their programming because it's just outside of their viewing area. However, you can see that Byron's pointing out in southern Illinois that those storms are strong. And as they move closer to, say, Wayne or Richland counties of the Evansville viewing area, then they will be actually on the air. So you're listening to Byron with Jeff Lyons over at WFIE in Evansville.
Yeah, be in your safe area there in Orchard, Garden Hill, even Wayne City and Sims out into Farrington. A good storm there from Mount Vernon, Illinois, and they're barreling off to the east. They're just racing along. So the strongest storm we have is right up over Clay County, getting ready to move into western stretches there of Wayne County. But look at all the lightning there that's pushing just out to the west of these areas. And then also to the north there, Blair and Smallwood, is get into Effingham County. That's a tornado warning. So you're surrounded by tornado warnings in Wayne and also Clay County, Illinois. I'm going to switch over here to the velocity table. So the most severe part of that storm is over Louisville, Blair, north of Oskaloosa, Xenia.
Yeah, you heard that right. It was Louisville.
Not Louisville. That's Illinois, by the way.
Yeah, and you just look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's Louisville. No, that's Clay County. That's well away from us. They're tracking these storms. They're looking at the velocity. They're looking where we have that strong push of wind. Again, we're watching the same things on the radar that we have here. They're on their live stream. We're on our live stream. These are all of our sister stations that we can tap into. And as we continue to track these storms moving closer to southern Indiana, they're still hours away from us. We're at about 10 till 9 right now. And I don't suspect we'll see any storms in our viewing area for maybe another 2 hours.
It's going to take some time.
Yeah, so we'd be looking closer to 11 o'clock, probably after midnight or so around or after midnight, by the time they would even get close to the I-65 corridor. You can see the way that's tilted. So obviously it's places across southern Indiana that get impacted first, though we have a few downpours, and I can pull the radar up and show you that. We still have a few downpours that are going on, but those are weakening. You'll notice down toward south of Evansville, that's having a hard time getting going. Even the clouds down there are sort of fizzling out. So that's not the focal point. Some folks were asking, what about storms ahead of the main line? So Jonathan or Jordan, I'll put your comment up. Any storm supposed to fire ahead of that main line, take away the fuel from the main line. Well, you can see it's going to have problems because that storm is not really. In fact, the modeling on that had those much stronger than where we are now.
Yeah,
so
HRRR did.
That's already collapsing.
Yep.
So the main show is going to be along that line. I don't suspect we're going to see any additional storms fire up within that zone. those are going to collapse. And it's really about that momentum and that push that's going to allow the storms out to the west continue to move in our direction and eventually weaken. We will still continue to mention that because some folks are like, well, boy, that looks pretty mean. That moves in, we're going to have a problem. Well, the western part of the viewing area could still be strong, but the weakening trend should ensue.
And keep in mind, too, that they have a bit more sunlight out there right now than we do because it's so far to the west. So they're still getting some fuel added into those storms, even though it's pretty dark around here. I know our sunset was just after 8 o'clock this evening. So they're going to run into this darkness. They're going to run out of that energy there. And one note about those storms that have been trying to fire up just due west of our counties there, they're running into a lack of moisture. I was looking at some of the moisture plumes there, and it is plentiful over western Kentucky. But the minute you get a little closer to that I-69 corridor and east of there, there's just not enough to keep those storms on life support. And that's why we're seeing those fizzle out.
Yeah, and our dew points are running in the 50s around here, so we don't have a whole lot of juice for them. Let me pop those up. You know, there's several things that we need for severe weather. We have to have the instability. We're going to run out of that as the evening wears on, so we still have it now. But our dew points are in the mid-50s. You know, you really want to be in the 60s to see the severe weather for this time of year.
Yes.
And, you know, Owensboro has 62, Tell City 62. Outside of that, most places are in the mid, maybe upper 50s. But places like Paoli, you look down, it's just, it matters, and it's just not real rich in moisture in that area.
And that's kind of outlining where the main threat is. It's those spots and west where we've got the moisture, where we've got the fuel. And we were talking about hail here. So, you know, how big is the hail? Are we talking from DJ here? And it would be relatively small. This is not a big hail maker. This is mainly a wind threat tonight, just because we're losing the instability. These storms are merged together. To get real big hail, you need like a supercell thunderstorm. And with all these storms already merged together, no one core of those merged storms can form huge hail like that. So at least you can rest assured that the hail's not the big problem. It's the wind. And even then, these storms are weakening our approach.
Yeah, Vicky's asking, we have people that tune in, much like you heard Byron and Jeff and Grant, the colleagues that we have across our company, talking about other places outside of their viewing area. We know that when we're on these live streams, because we can reach so many people outside of just the few counties that we serve, this can go global on something like this. Obviously, we're focused on our people in our 33 counties, but Vicky's asking about Lexington. You're going to wind up seeing the weakening phase as this pushes over toward the I-75 corridor. So I don't really think you have a whole lot to worry about in Lexington tonight. Probably some rain, maybe a few rumbles of thunder, but the severe threat should be waning by the point that it reaches I-65.
Yeah, so you folks over there in Lexington, the Bluegrass region, this is not that big of a deal for you. This is mainly as you work your way toward like Du Bois County. Basically, take I-64 west of Louisville. Once you hit like the Dale exit there, that's when you're going to start to want to keep an eye on things here in the shorter term, that after, 10, 11 o'clock time frame, Eastern time here.
Brian's popped in. He says, appreciate you all helping others to understand the customization of the app alerts. Yeah, and Bardstown, right. That's where my family lives.
Bardstown.
There they are. Thanks, Brian. Yes, that's the thing. People get, I can't tell you, and I'm guilty of this. You download an app and it's like, okay, well, that's the app, and you don't dig into it. And it's like, you can adjust so much stuff on these apps. The weather app really is super powerful. I mean, first of all, we update it all the time throughout the day. So when you tap on the hourly, you can really tap on the hour. You can tap on the day part. So if you go to daily and tap tonight or tomorrow, you'll read a paragraph of information that we've actually sat there and typed in. That's super important, especially as we get into this busy time of what we call Derby or the PGA. For outdoor events, we were real specific on what we're thinking. So it's not just a computer-generated forecast. I think that's so valuable.
It's so hard to get a forecast when you're doing what we call weather by icon, where you literally just get an icon, and now you're sitting there trying to interpret what the heck that means. So that's why that text is super important, and that's why the hour-by-hour forecast is super important. Really dig into it. Play around with it. I guarantee you're going to find something in there you didn't know it did. You can submit your photos and videos on there too, and we can display them on TV. It's that easy. It's all that you need right in one app, the Wave Weather.
Well, you can always watch our live stream. Which,
Wave Weather now is on there. You just tap watch live and boom, you'll get reconnected to a page where you can do that. And the cool thing now, by the way, I have to be a little nerd here for just a second, is if you're doing other things on your phone and you want to kind of keep up with our live stream, in the weather app, you'll be able to tap, of course, the live stream, play that. if you're on iOS, like an Apple iPhone, or of course on an iPad, you can tap the picture-in-picture button and you can have our video playing while you're doing other stuff on your phone, maybe keeping up on the Wave Weather app, doing something else, responding to an email, so that you don't have to like turn us off while you're doing something else. So multitasking there. You can do it with our live stream Wave Weather now. It's kind of cool.
All right, let's see some of your other questions here. Ashley's asking, would the spinning be in the leading edge? Well, in a situation like this, most of the time it would be along a boundary like this. It would be, sort of that jagged edge, but it would be very minor and it would be very quick. This is not a supercell type of setup. So we're not looking at long track tornadoes. In fact, the tornado warnings that we have are all radar indicated at this point. It is, yeah. And, can still cause some problems with the wind. The wind is the main threat. And that's another thing not to get hung up on is the difference between straight line winds and tornadoes. You may not notice the difference by looking at the damage. The fact is both can do equal damage. So the important part is knowing where it's at, if you're in its path, and what you need to do to stay safe. So
yeah, like a 70, 80 mile per hour straight line wind, it may look like your house has gotten hit by an EF0 or an EF1 tornado. So those can be just as dangerous. And we will go on the air wall to wall often for those 70 plus mile per hour winds, especially heading through populated areas. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah. For some folks just now jumping in, I see some folks are new. We have a chance for some severe weather overnight tonight, would be after midnight for us. We have the severe thunderstorm watch that includes parts of our viewing area to the west of us until 3 a.m. You can see that includes Lawrence down to Orange, Du Bois, Crawford counties in Indiana. And in Kentucky, it includes Meade, Breckenridge, and Grayson. Again, the greatest severe threat is going to be out to the west of us, west of I-65. Clearly, that's where we have the storms ongoing now. You can see the lightning. You can see the warnings in place. We've got three tornado warnings that are on the map, and a number of severe thunderstorm warnings that line pretty much that entire stretch of storms.
Yeah, and those storms that you see down in southern Kentucky, I know Chris Bowles was on there asking about, hey, can you look at the CC data on those? We are not seeing anything severe on those right now. There was one lone severe thunderstorm warning north of the Nashville metro area a little earlier this evening. That is gone. Those storms are kind of on life support, and as they drift closer to Bowling Green, they're not going to encounter enough moisture to stay alive in that fashion. We've already noticed some weakening by the lightning count going down on those. So that initial burst down there is not the main focus. It would be the storms off to our west. They'll have the momentum to survive a little bit longer into our counties, despite the ingredients not being in place here. Often with these lines of storms moving in, you do have some concern about them kind of outrunning their support and still having some severe weather characteristics with them. So that's why there's that abundance of caution here with that slight risk or 2 out of 5 over a good chunk of our counties up to about I-65 here.
We've got Angela asking about our app, talking about the current temperature and the status bar. On the Android phones, it used to have, if you had the widget, you can still see a number of things, but it used to have the temperature in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. Now it has like the sky condition, but we're working to figure out if that's coming back or not.
I looked at the release notes today for this version of the app, and they didn't mention that they were doing that in there. So this may have been kind of an oversight. So we'll check with them. We've heard from a lot of folks. So I'm happy that so many folks pay attention to that kind of stuff because
it's handy, right?
It is. Yeah. So that means that you use it, and we'll let our app vendor know we want it back.
Yeah, and the tough part is we don't control that. We have a say in what goes on. That was not one of them, by the way.
We had no idea they were doing that.
Yeah. Let's see. A lot of folks asking about individual places. I'm not going to pop those on just because we've sort of gone through that. And we'll roll through the maps again. You're looking at those warnings that are coming out for central Illinois. Let me just zoom into those while we have them on the screen. It's probably going to flag the tornado warning, but you'll notice that says tornado possible. When you see that black outline around any of our severe thunderstorm warnings, that means the tornado possible threat is there. Those winds with that coming in at about 60 miles an hour. That's well out to the west. This is right along the Indiana border. So coming in out of Illinois into Indiana, we'll be approaching Terre Haute with some pretty strong winds.
Yeah, and that tornado warning that you see just to the south and west of that looks like that is kind of more concentrated within the area that the NWS thinks that there's more of a problem with an appendage there that may indeed produce a quick spin-up tornado. So it's kind of like there's a small area within that severe thunderstorm warning. They've outlined it a tornado warning there just because of that being kind of the higher risk area. Not seeing a super amount of rotation on velocity here, but with these lines of storms, these are really tough. You often don't see much at all. And in fact, a lot of these warnings are issued by looking at the reflectivity. And if they see an appendage, they just kind of have to assume that it's rotating because, I mean, it may be in a sub-pixel way. It's in such a small area that the radar has a tough time picking that up. So these, what we call QLCS tornado events are really tough. Kevin's put on the storm reports here, and what you don't see are tornado reports at the moment, which is kind of a good sign. We haven't had any like actual confirmed tornado reports in southern Illinois into the St. Louis area as well. So let's hope that that continues to be the case for those folks out to our west who have continued to be afflicted by this severe weather here.
Yeah, nothing going on here. Obviously, it's a clean sweep on our radar, but that is not the case moving into the north and west. And that's the zone we'll be watching over the next hour or two as it starts to move into southern Indiana.
Yeah, so that's going to approach the Wabash River Valley here. We are down to one tornado warning out of this thing. We're down to one severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible tag. So that kind of shows you that we're coming down from 5 and 6 of these things being tornado warned earlier to just that one segment. One thing we will have to watch along that I-70 segment there heading toward Terre Haute is like a bookend vortex. Basically, it's just kind of inherent spin on the edge of the line of storms that develops. It's kind of like an eddy in a stream where you get a rock and it just kind of makes a little swirl. So we'll watch that. Those don't often cause big problems, but they can trigger a warning or two. I don't think that has much life left on it, though, the way it's looking at the moment.
Yeah, Chris is asking any ground reports or imping from Paducah, and no, we had no imping reports from those folks. We can display the imping reports from our area on our maps, but once we get that far out, we can't show them on the maps, but I can see them in front of me. So no, and that's some good news that we're not getting reports that far south. The bulk of it's where you see that Boeing, and of course they just issued the new warning that's coming right up to the edge of Illinois and Indiana. I suspect that we're going to see another hour of warnings out of this, and maybe a slow fade on those warnings as it gradually comes to an end. So this is what we're watching. This is what we'll be tracking all night. So if you ever wanted to know what we do when there's something like this on the radar, we sort of keep it in front of us and we keep looking at that line of storms. We're looking at the lightning count over the same area to see if that's going up or down, often an indicator of weakening trends over a certain period of time. If that lightning count goes down, that just tells us the storms are weakening somewhat.
Yeah, you can see it fluctuating around there. That's a 10-minute lightning count. You can always see it in our banners on the radar, and it's always a 10-minute lightning count for the exact view of the screen map there that you see there. Notice that is a tornado, or I should say a severe thunderstorm warning with tornado possible tag. They have just issued kind of in the crook of the Wabash River there. I think we're going to see a lot of these this evening. I think the National Weather Service is going to play that card quite a bit here, just because the spin-up tornado threat will be lessening here over time, but they want to make sure that at least they kind of impress that, hey, we're not completely out of the woods. So that's going to be a tool they use quite often this evening. It looks like they're already pivoting to that as this starts to approach Indiana right now. Kevin has queried that warning there. You'll see that threat tornado possible on it. That's what we mean by tornado possible tag. It's like a special severe thunderstorm warning, if you will. These impact-based tags came out 5-ish years ago, and they've been real helpful because it's hard just to put one type of warning on everything when there's kind of degrees of problems that can happen. You'll see this severe thunderstorm warning, for instance, has a tornado possible tag on it and a considerable threat with it as well, meaning, hey, this may have a considerable wind threat alongside that too. So, kind of just some things that they put on these tags give you a better idea of what these storms are capable of based on what their systems are telling them and what the radar signatures look like here.
All right. So here we are at 9:05 in the evening, just tracking these storms as they move closer to us. They're still hours away from the Louisville area. They're still more than an hour away from our viewing area. When we look at just how far they are, we can give you sort of a guide on that. Let me just put a measurement on it. And this will give us an idea of, where's my ruler? There we go. And I'm just going to measure it. Let's measure it from the western part of the viewing area. So let's just say Jasper. These are pretty much moving to the east. 70, let's just say that leading edge is 75 miles away from Jasper. And the speed of these,
They were moving at 40 earlier, but I think they've started to accelerate a bit because you can kind of see a cold pool's trying to form there. So maybe 50, 60 miles an hour.
So this is just over an hour and a half away.
Yeah.
So we'd be looking at like 10:30 moving into the Jasper area. So something like that. And then, of course, a little bit longer from Louisville. So if we were to map that from Louisville, we're roughly about 150 miles. That's almost 3 hours away.
Yeah.
That put it here at midnight. That's what our
perfect with
timing has been.
Yeah.
So
That has been kind of one constant today, which is nice, as we haven't had to play with our timing of the forecast much, just because these storms have unfolded about like the models have anticipated. The one thing we talked about earlier, though, were those storms down in western Kentucky and northwest Tennessee. Models did see those, but they tried to carry them a little closer into our counties, more so than I think will happen. That's kind of the one model error of the day, but that doesn't really have a huge bearing on what happens with these storms out to the west. These will be the dominant players.
Destiny saying, when will it start to weaken? Well, we need to get a couple hours past sunset. So the storms out to the west, they're still dealing with sunset out there. So as Ryan mentioned, we still have the sunlight out there. For us, we're an hour past sunset. They'll start to weaken. I'm going to say within the next hour, they should start to weaken, maybe the next hour and a half. So that means that as they move into Jasper, if we track that correctly and said it would be an hour and a half, 10:30, that would mean Jasper could still see some strong storms, but the weakening would then start occurring. Takes a little while to weaken them completely down. So some areas west of I-65, this is the important thing to take away. If you're west of I-65, you're going to have to pay greater attention than if you're to the east.
And it's just that easy, just because of the weakening trend. And that's why we're in that kind of flex zone, as I talked about here, between about Du Bois County and I-65, where you're going to have that weakening, but we can't guarantee how fast that's going to happen. So that's the one variable that we'll watch for this evening. And so if you see warnings being issued, you'll know that weakening is taking a little bit slower than it could have been, which is something to keep an eye on.
Sandra is asking, do you think we'll get any watches issued? Well, we already have the one in place for the western part of the viewing area.
Oh, there's a new warning.
New warnings coming out. You're going to see warnings. I mean, it's not started weakening yet, so this is good. Warnings are going to pop until the weakening trend begins, and that won't happen for another hour. So we're going to have warnings for the next hour, almost a guarantee. All right. This will gradually weaken later tonight. For Sandra, who's saying, do you think other watches will get issued? I'm doubtful that we'll see another watch issued past the one that's out. But again, it depends on the weakening trend.
These storms are moving at about 55 miles per hour on that new warning. That's why they've kind of advanced that warning out a bit ahead of the rest of the warnings, because they're speeding up a little bit, just enough for them to say, okay, let's give enough forewarning to those folks about this storm segment now that we know that speeds up a little bit.
And Brandon's asking, will we be live on here when they get close to the viewing area? Most likely, yes. Of course, we'll be in the 11 o'clock news by the time they get really into the area. So we'll be on the news.
Which you can live stream, by the way. I know we get a lot of folks during our newscasts that are saying, why aren't you live? We are live. We're live in our newscast. So keep that in mind. Go to wave3.com/live stream. You can live stream our newscast there. You can go to the Wave Now app on your connected smart TV. So we're always live kind of somewhere throughout the day. It's just notice that during our newscast times, we can't be in this room. We're in our big studio. So we're live in a different spot.
Yeah. And then after the newscast, if the storms are rolling through and there are warnings, obviously we'll be on one place or the other. So we'll make sure we're here to give you the info. Heather's asking, do you think tornadoes are possible with this storm? Well, we can't rule it out. You can clearly see it's really a wind-producing storm to the west of us. That's really what it's going to be. So it's can't rule it out because there is some shear in the atmosphere. That gives us enough confidence that there could be a tornado, but for the most part, it's a wind maker. These are very strong winds in the atmosphere that we're pulling down to the surface. Straight line winds, that's the real push.
Yeah. And we'll continue to watch and see how quickly these weaken, because, of course, they can sometimes push a little bit farther past the support that they have to keep going just because of the momentum of the storms. But they'll weaken pretty quickly once they get in our counties.
Yeah, we're watching this. So are our colleagues. We've mentioned that Grant Dade was out in Carbondale down to Cape Girardeau, and then Jeff Lyons out of WFIE over in Evansville. Those are two of our sister stations in the path of this storm. Steve Templeton was in St. Louis. Those folks were watching and tracking these storms as they move closer. I want to take you over to Jeff Lyons in
at about
Evansville here.
819 Burnt Prairie there along Interstate 64 at 822. Carmi at 828 and Crossville at 833, Grayville 838. So between now,
again, he's looking at the
the
velocity. So he's looking at the wind speeds
here in southern Illinois. Remember, we have
and now he's showing the thunderstorm watch that includes his viewing area.
Including the Evansville area.
Yeah, so that's what they're tracking out there. You'll notice that he's kind of on the air with a wall-to-wall coverage situation there, not only, of course, on their television platforms, but, of course, on their apps and the website as well. And notice that one severe thunderstorm warning that's kind of breached into his Indiana counties there near Princeton. I think the Toyota plant's up there. That is the one that's kind of getting closer to the Evansville metro area for him at this point.
Yeah, and you can see that on our map. It looks like this. So it's the same cluster of storms that Jeff is tracking, and they're talking about the different levels of the thunderstorm warning. So we're just kind of walking you through, since nothing's in our viewing area, we thought we'd walk you through what some of our colleagues are doing. This coverage coming to us from our sister station WFIE over in Evansville. Jeff's been there for 30 some years,
and Byron's been there forever too. Yeah,
and Byron has been there for a long, long time. So folks that know that tri-state area know those folks very well.
Everybody until 9.
Yeah, you can see their viewing area actually does include a couple of our fringe counties like Du Bois and Perry County there. So they'll track them all the way in there. And then we would take over with, kind of keeping an eye on these storms once they head into our counties. The kind of beauty of having all of these gray television stations is a lot of these gray television stations are in adjoining markets. For instance, we've got Evansville to our west, Louisville here, Lexington with WKYT to our east, and of course Fox 19 now up in Cincinnati. So we've got you guys kind of covered all the way through, regardless of where you're watching from, if you happen to be close by but maybe not in our television viewing area.
Well, they're really focused on Wayne County. That's where we have some of those stronger storms. They've had some wind damage through that area as well. I see a number of folks in the room. If you're a big weather, let's just say a weather fanatic. I'm curious how many, if you're a weather fanatic, type of 1. If you're just looking for information tonight so you can sleep easy, type of 2. How's that? I'm just curious to see who's in our room watching us.
Yeah, because I think we're weather fanatics here, and we would be all typing
I'm trying to type a 1, and I can't even see my own comment.
The cool part is we can see all of your comments on all the platforms, whether it's YouTube, X. We've also got Facebook in here. So all of these, look at all these 1s and 2s coming in. Most of these are 1s, actually.
A lot, yeah.
1 and 2. Okay, well, that's
I love it.
I'd like to see that.
That's the interactivity. See,
That's
this is
cool
nice for folks that are just watching on the platforms. Like, what are they talking about? Well, we're streaming on all of our social channels too. So if you're on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, all of those people are chiming in. So that's where we're getting the questions from. That's where we're seeing the 1s and 2s that we mentioned.
And we'd like to see folks on YouTube here. A lot of YouTube comments here this evening. That's an emerging platform for us to make sure that we're serving our live streaming friends on YouTube a little bit better, and that you can be viewed all across the world, just like our Wave Weather app and our Wave Weather Now live stream here. So again, for those just joining us here, we don't have any warnings in our counties just yet, but that watch is out to our west and the storms are moving in. Obviously, Weather Geek, if for those here on our live stream on social media or YouTube, Weather Geek is the name of the person there on YouTube we're putting on the screen.
He's like, obviously, I'm a 1.
because his name is Weather Geek.
I
right?
love that.
He's got the laughing with the crying face.
And then here's Linda. She's like, I'm going to go with 1, but I easily get scared by storms. I get it. So sometimes you just want to know, am I going to be able to go to bed tonight? Like,
Right.
am I going to have to stay up and monitor this all night, or should I just
And it seems like we've had so many of these late night storm events this year, and that causes a lot of fatigue because, the next day you're like completely zonked out because you've had the anxiety the night before, you've been staying up late. And one way to combat that, by the way, is a NOAA weather radio. All right, get one of those things, put it in alert mode, battery backup, and then have the Wave Weather app as well for an auxiliary backup system.
Cody says, I don't like severe weather, so I learned to study and help me understand what's going on. Bingo. I've told this story many times because we've done more of these lately than usual because of the severe weather. But my grandmother would get the holy water out. She'd be in a storm shelter. She hated a rumble of thunder would scare her to death. Well, consequently, if you're around that, it scares you to death. So I became terrified of storms, and then started being like, well, that's not so bad, and read about it, learn about it. It's like, well, then it became obviously an interest, a hobby, eventually a career. And You're right, Cody, the more you know, the better off you are. Sounded like an NBC.
I know.
That's not what I meant by that. Right?
From the 90s.
And then Timothy says, if I were young again, I'd be a meteorologist. You're never too old.
No.
That's what I say.
I know for a lot of folks, they think that, the math's too hard, the science is too hard. Look, if you love it enough, you'll find a way. I am not the best math person, but boy, did I make it through 3 semesters of calculus and 1 of differential equations. It was tough, but you can do it if you really want to do it.
Yeah, and it's fun too. Once you realize the connection of everything, you start realizing, well, we're actually smart enough to be able to forecast it. Like, this is pretty cool. This is nice. Supercomputers were built because of weather. Like, that helped us forecast the first modeling of the atmosphere.
And it's not like we're sitting here doing math problems all day. The computers do that for us, but we have to understand the governing equations of the atmosphere as meteorologists to know what information these computers are dealing with, what the limitations are, and kind of how the atmosphere works so we can explain it to you. So we may not be dealing with the math problems all day, but we are, in more of an abstract sense, dealing with math 24/7.
All right, weather nerd. Favorite equation?
Oh, QG omega.
Quasi-geostrophic.
Yeah. What's yours?
That's the same one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also like TV equals nRT.
Well, that one's easy.
Which is the ideal gas law. That is an easy one. I like it just because it's easy and it's easy to understand.
Well, yeah, and that's and so applicable.
Yeah, and I can even show school kids, how PV equals nRT works with my cloud in a bottle experiment that I do for school groups. It's cool.
It was very cool because what it says is that if you alter any of those components, pressure, temperature, it is going to alter the other.
Yeah, and it shows you the kind of the direct relationship between some of those variables, which is awesome.
All right, let's see. I'm just popping up comments. I hope they're okay. I kind of want to be a meteorologist when I grow up. I've been wanting to be one for 3 years now, and I find weather cool and interesting.
That's good.
I say go for it, right? I think we were all bitten by the weather bug when we were young. And if that's something that that you have an interest in, then just kind of follow it through. Eventually, you're going to be more interested or less interested. And if it falls on the latter, then bail out and do something else, right?
We both know plenty of people who made it through freshman and sophomore year of college, and then boop, you saw them in a different program once they got the junior year. So it happens. That's okay. But yeah, a lot of folks, they follow it all the way through. They get to sit in these chairs.
Brandon is a hobbyist, and it says, I finally learned to read a hodograph.
Yes.
Not super in-depth, but enough to see when components come together. And those are something for severe weather that we look at frequently.
Yeah, they're really helpful because it helps to diagnose the wind shear in the atmosphere and sort of where that is, the lower, the middle, the upper atmosphere, and how the tornado threat evolves based on that.
Yeah, and here's Anonymous. You guys are just yapping now. You're right. We're answering your questions, so not just yapping.
Welcome to the Q&A part of this live stream this evening. If you haven't noticed,
maybe we are just yapping. Whatever. That's a good thing though, because it means we have nothing serious to be worried about right now.
Yeah, look at the radar. 0 tornado warnings out to our west now. So we've reduced that down to a big old goose egg, and it looks like
the lightning count has come down.
Yeah, lightning count's down to 445, if I can read that there. So yeah, some good news. It looks like those little storms are getting ready to hit Hardinsburg that are just south and west of our area. So far, I do not believe any of those are severe.
All right. And there's Andre saying you got him Wave and Company. Gets him hooked on the web.
Yeah, Andre, I went to high school with it. Manuel there. Hello, Andre. Always answering questions for him.
Jacob says his wife thinks he's crazy for how much he's learned from the weather from you all. Well, I hope. That's the thing. I'll be honest. I'm when I'm on TV and we have like 2.5, 3 minutes to explain what's going on. Most people, and we know this because of research, the television station does spend a lot of money on research. What the majority of the people want to see, and that's what they sort of focus on is the majority. And that's not a lot of science in behind it. So while we can push that in on occasion, they really want to know, they really want to see the 10-day. They want to know the extended forecast. If you're in the morning, you want to know what it's going to be like throughout the day. So you know what to grab as you head out the door, get the kids dressed or whatever. In the afternoons, you want to know what it's going to be like for tomorrow morning and the next few days, oftentimes highlighting the weekend. So we spend a lot of time breaking down event forecast. We spend a lot of time. So that's why if you've been watching, we've got all the Derby Festival,
yes,
the thunder forecast.
I've been working on all those graphics this week.
Yeah, because it's all on our doorstep. It's like here next week. So we try to break that down and really spend a lot of time forecasting for just those events. We'll do the same for the PGA Championship when it's in town. Obviously, we've been doing that for all of these severe weather events. But anytime we have big outdoor events, we really pay close attention, and that's where the app comes in handy. So you'll see all that, but you'll also see it on TV. So instead of going into the quasi-geostrophic equation, you're going to hear us talk more about what the forecast looks like for Forecastle or what it looks like for Bourbon and Beyond. Because not only do we have an in-depth forecast, but we got some pretty cool graphics to go along with it.
You're welcome. The deal is that a lot of folks are just not as interested in the geeky stuff. They've got busy lives. We've got kids. So want to make sure we're trying to serve everybody. So that's why we can kind of get a little nerdy on these live streams, which is a lot of fun. We like that.
Yeah, while still trying to show you, I could get my phone out and do it, that way. But this kind of keep the radar up in between us. We're having a conversation. We're taking some of your questions. Norman from Madison, he says Tom Will got him started in 1974.
We hear from Norman a lot, and Tom Will's got a lot of us, started. Tom Wills, John Belsky, the like. This wave weather department goes back more than, 70 years now. It's amazing.
Let's see. I had now the comments are scrolling. Here's Eli saying weather is something he likes to follow.
Hello, Eli on YouTube.
Yeah, a lot of folks on YouTube tonight.
That's good.
Can you do a quick recap for tonight? Sure. Yeah. Some folks again jumping in. So let's just start with the watch, all right? And then we'll roll through it all one more time here. It's 9:22. Then I'll show you FIE as those storms are moving in, and then we'll call it quits. I've evidently clicked on a comment from Alexandria. Ever since the Glen Mary tornado in Kentucky that went through my backyard, I've been on top of the weather, became the family's meteorologist. Every family needs a meteorologist. That wasn't all that long ago.
No, you were out there during the aftermath of that. It was pretty bad. It was
rough.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the watch. Again, the process goes that hopefully you saw that we had an alert day out for today. That made you say, all right, well, maybe I need to pay closer attention to what's happening in the forecast. You tuned in either at midday to see Brian or at 3 o'clock, or you saw me at 4, 5, 6, or Ryan at 7. Maybe you've jumped on, obviously, here to our social streams. We're just here to give information saying it's still an alert day. We're watching it. The Storm Prediction Center has now chimed in and said, hey, we're watching it. We're going to put a watch out. This is a severe thunderstorm watch until 3 o'clock.
Yeah, so that's the watch. It's out to our west at this time. And what we're going to notice is that as these storms move in, they are going to weaken. That's why the watch does not extend beyond that I-65 corridor, or into it, I should say, at this point. You see the storms are out to our west now. The warnings are just west of our counties, Du Bois being our westernmost there. They are packing some wind at this point. There is one new tornado warning north of Poplar Bluff, Missouri there, but I don't think that's going to last very long. These will be weakening as they approach. You do see that secondary area of thunderstorms near Bowling Green right now. None of those are severe. Could those be severe? I don't think we have enough moisture in the atmosphere locally here to really support that, but it's something we'll keep an eye on here. That main line of storms from Effingham, Illinois down to Carbondale, that's the main game. The timing on that, of course, tonight, a little closer to midnight here in Louisville, probably about 10:30-ish for our western counties. Kevin circling there, that secondary area of storms.
Yeah, we're starting to see that build just a little bit farther to the north, up closer to the Ohio River. So is it impossible to see thunderstorms before that main line? No. In fact, some folks always will. It's just that the main push of energy is going to be with that line of storms out to the west of us, and that's where we see the greatest severe weather threat.
Right, and that's why they've got all those warnings out there. At the moment, you see the watch kind of presented in a watch box format there, encompasses all of western Kentucky, southeast Missouri. The question that we always get asked is, will we see that watch extended into Louisville? Will it go all the way to Frankfurt? We will see. It depends on how quickly these storms weaken. At this point, if I were a betting man, I would venture to say it wouldn't extend much more, if any at all, based on the radar trend at this point, starting to lose some of the characteristics of severe weather in the storms.
We've been in the warm sector today. We hit a high of 84. That's off of record highs earlier in the week and near record highs the last several days. So we've been very warm for mid-April standards. That's what we call the warm sector, where you're on the backside of the warm front, out ahead of the cold front, and now the cold front is marching in. We have enough energy out to our west to prompt severe weather. That's obviously ongoing with a number of warnings, and that is pushing in our direction. Now, you'll see that area moves up from the south, in from the west. That's where we start to see that collision right around midnight or so. This may be just a little slow, I think. So it may be, let's just say it's an hour slow. So I'd say around 11:30. Then that gradually pushes through the Louisville area as it weakens. Still expect it to weaken as it moves through. Doesn't mean it's going to be weakened by the time it moves into the western part of the viewing area, but I think by the time it hits I-65 and pushes farther to the east, we'll be in that weakening trend. Takes a little bit of time to weaken this when you're dealing with so much energy.
Right, and that's why we have the alert day out. If we were like super 100% confident that this would weaken before it hits our western counties, we wouldn't have pulled the trigger on that today, but that's why it's in place, just because there is some uncertainty with the speed at which it will weaken. Now, early tomorrow morning, for those folks planning for the morning commute, there may be a few showers, possibly some downpours around. Those won't be severe, and they'll be out of our hair by midday, giving us a pretty nice day tomorrow in the 60s.
So we have the alert day, 9 p.m., which is where we're past now, to 2 a.m. It's the time that we're watching. We've got the thunderstorms that are just now starting to develop south of Tell City, just north and west of the Brandenburg area. Show you that on the radar a little closer in a second. The storms should be weakening as they arrive Louisville. Damaging winds in excess of 65 miles an hour west of Louisville, possible. That's going to be the main zone for that. Obviously, we're in that slight risk along and west of 65 and in the marginal risk to our east.
Right, and so that colorfulness that you see on the map there kind of denotes the different risk areas, going from the highest out west near Du Bois County with that brown enhanced to the 2 out of 5 slide over us here in Louisville and along I-65, and then you get down to that marginal 1 out of 5 to our east there. Kind of a gradient of severe weather risk, if you will, from this system. So these storms will be weakening. We just got to figure out how quickly they're going to weaken, and that's kind of a wait and see situation, what we call nowcasting, where we look at the radar and start to make some educated guesses here.
So we've zoomed into the storm that's getting closer to our viewing area. This one's just south of Perry County, approaching Tell City.
Yep.
This one, let me just put this into motion so we can get a good motion on that. This is the last several hours. Yeah, so that's going to move right into Tell City.
It really just developed within the last few frames here pretty quickly. Boom.
Yeah, and it's not severe. Does have some lightning with it. And you can see that more lightning strikes popping out. So that storm's still intensifying. That's out ahead of the main line. Can we see some of these as they move in? Yes. Will they become severe? Can't rule it out, but the main push will again be with and out ahead of that front. That's where we have the greatest lift. And frankly, that's where we have the most instability, is out to the west.
Right, and that's all kind of because of timing on the instability part. Those storms develop during the heating of the day out in Missouri and parts even farther west than that. But now that they're moving into our area, the sun has set in about over an hour ago now. So they're going to be running into that cooler air that's going to be settling in over us and not be able to keep those updrafts in the storm going. So eventually they're going to run out of steam. It's just when. That's the big question.
So far, I don't think we've had any reports of damage, but let's check back in with our friends over at WFIE. They're analyzing those storms, and we'll just see if they have any damage coming in.
Thunderstorm, and it's producing a ton of lightning. Along that leading edge there, where you see the updraft there, and then the front, it'll be front loaded where a lot of lightning and hail. And sometimes you can have that spin up tornado there along the leading edge. So that's just a 3D. We don't use this a lot, but just shows you the dynamics of the thunderstorm. And it's kind of evolving where it's working more to the north and west. So it's right up astride there, the Louisville Wabash River west of Albion. Very busy there on Highway 15, Mount Erie. Hey, the lightning has reduced a little bit, so that's encouraging. Down to Aldie and Decker, but and you still have time in Carmi and Field to get to your safe shelters. A lot of ball games going on, softball, Little League, West Salem, Highway 130, west there of Bone Gap. Might be a little bit of delay there. That large hail core now is east of Fairfield. Has dropped.
You can see Byron's chiming in on the larger hail cores they have there. They're tracking the hail as it moves in. Haven't seen much bigger than what, pea-size hail?
Yeah, they were showing some of the storm reports there in southern Illinois with these storms as they move through. So not a big hail producer. We were not expecting them to be. And look, he's tracking that storm that we were moving into Tell City at the moment there. So that's our friends and neighbors over at WFIE 14 News in Evansville, Indiana.
Christine now, Highway 66, also Highway 70, and then 657. Jeff?
Okay, thanks, Byron, for that update. And obviously, we are sticking with you here on streaming. One thing about this event, obviously everything, all the ingredients are in place. We're just kind of waiting for it to unfold, but we're not getting a lot of damage reports or any damage reports yet. So,
and that's exactly what we've been looking for, because if it's already weakening out that way, it's certainly going to be weakening as it moves closer to us. And that trend will continue. There's no reversing that trend. So that's the good news.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's why we try to keep up with our colleagues and the reports out to the west. It better helps us tell the story of what's going to happen here tonight. And that supports that weakening story there. So 2 thumbs up on that for sure.
No tornado warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, push of wind, lots of rain and lightning in and out. We'll certainly keep an eye on this. We're going to wrap it up. Appreciate everybody jumping in tonight. If you are looking for updates, you can hang here. We're going to be back on as needed overnight tonight if these storms still have warnings. I suspect they will have warnings as they approach the western part of the viewing area. So that would be places like Lawrence, Jackson County, perhaps over into Orange, Du Bois, getting close to Du Bois now. So we're about an hour away from those storms moving into the western part of our viewing area. As we get closer to the 11 o'clock news, it'll be hard for me to be in here and in the studio. So just know we'll have an update on the 11 o'clock news. And then if we need to be back on overnight, not going anywhere, so may as well be on with you. And I can jump on tonight and keep you updated with what's happening across the area.
And again, you can live stream our 11 o'clock news, wave3.com/live stream. It's also on the Wave Now app for your smart TV. Wave Weather app gives you that Wave Weather Now 24/7 live stream with our updates there. We're live on Wave Weather Now right now. So if you're not seeing us on our app or our website, then you can always head there to see these live streams. Real easy to do.
I've punched up for folks that may be headed to Thunder over Louisville, the 10-day forecast, 60s for the weekend. Saturday's forecast has improved since the beginning of the week, so that's some good news. Just a quick peek on that will show that if you're headed out to the banks of the Ohio, temperature should be in the right around 64 degrees. You'll notice partly sunny skies. And then by fireworks time, upper 40s to near 50 degrees. Still a few clouds around. What about the wind? It's coming in from the north and northwest. That takes the smoke to the south and east. That brings it right across the downtown area. So the southern Indiana side.
Hooray for Indiana. They get a good year.
Yeah. Not bad, right? They had a good year last year,
they
too.
did.
Yes.
Getting lucky.
Yeah, for sure.
Last year was so windy. I do remember that. That was crazy.
So that's the Racing Louisville forecast for folks headed to the Lynn Family Stadium. Looks pretty good as well. All in all, we've got a decent forecast for Saturday. Sunday's a little cool at 61, especially compared to where we've been this week.
Yes.
But then next week, we at least get back to normal in the 70s.
And keep in mind, Monday morning, there is a small frost threat. So don't plant your vegetable gardens just yet over the weekend. Wait until after Derby or Mother's Day for maximum assurance on that.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I like to wait anyway. I was wait it out until everything's gone. And you're like, man, Mom, I was going to get you some flowers for Mother's Day, but they've all been picked over. So here's this one marigold.
Yeah, maybe don't wait on that so much.
We're 16 days away from the Derby. So
speaking of Derby,
so
we've done the eclipse. We've done Derby. We're getting ready to do Derby. Like, it's been a busy, severe weather season.
Yeah.
Are we tired yet? I don't
Yes.
think so. We got to have the energy for it, right?
Like it or not, right?
Right.
It's harder as you get older. I know
Heck or
that.
high water, as they say. Yeah.
All right. We'll say goodbye. We'll see you back here on Wave News at 11 o'clock. So long, everybody.
See ya.